risky. If you try to screen your employees by giving them some kind of test of their ability, you're setting yourself up for potentially costly legal risk. But if you ask them for a credential, then you're not incurring legal risk, because the Supreme Court didn't say that you weren't allowed to ask for credentials. So for the employer, the choice is easy. You do not take the legal risk of testing for ability. You demand credentials. In that case, it was high school degrees. You can see how this would be applied down the road. Never test your employees to see how good they are at things. Let colleges and universities do it for you. Drive them into colleges and universities to get those credentials, and you absolve yourself as an employer from taking on that legal risk. You're also outsourcing your training to colleges and universities. It's cheaper anyway. So again, this is going to drive up demand for credentials. The last thing I want to mention are barriers to entry, and those have a different effect than all of the other interventions that I was talking about. All the other interventions I was talking about drive up demand for college education. But barriers to entry stifle innovation. It means that there aren't as many providers of the kinds of education that people might want. It means that there's less innovation. So the barriers to entry that we have, the main ones, are accreditation. So we have regional accreditation boards enabled by the federal government. And these are expensive and I think mostly useless. There could be much different, less onerous versions of accreditation that I think would be worthwhile, but what we have right now is an expensive, onerous, lengthy, and a system of very little value. We also have state authorization. So if a new university wants to come into a state either for online education or for creating a new university, they have to get permission from the state authorizers. And interestingly, the state authorizers are often the people who are in charge of the public university system. So that's a pretty clear conflict of interest right there. And so all of this stifles new entrants into higher And so I think those two things, keep academic standards high and change the funding so it focuses on college performance. So I think that, and you probably honestly know this better than I do because you've seen the success of unaccredited K-12 schools. And if the students succeed despite that lack of accreditation, then they're all the evidence that parents need. I think there's an additional challenge for universities because universities will take students from unaccredited K-12 schools. And therefore, once, by the time the student wants to go out to the job market, you finally have this official seal of approval, right? They've got a degree from an accredited university. And so you have to make that last leap from an unaccredited university to the employer. And I think that is relationship building. You have to build relationships with employers to show that the students that you are graduating are every bit as qualified, if not more qualified, than the students coming out of accredited universities. And I think that, given what I know about what you're doing, should not be hard to do. Jeff?
The price is that parents and students face. There's the sticker price, and then there's the actual price that they pay. And even the sticker price is kind of under pressure now. That like the elite universities are saying you can come here and you will have no loans, no nothing. We have no unmet need for your student. The UNC system, followed Purdue, has frozen tuition and fees for a number of years, and other schools have gone with, once you get in, your tuition is guaranteed for 4 years. How does that fit into it's not that loans are any harder to get, but what's the force that's leading the schools to go in that direction?
Right, so the force that's leading public schools to do that is public pressure. I think that's pretty clear, especially here in North Carolina. We've got a constitutional requirement that our schools be as free as practicable. Obviously, free is impractical. I think that they put that word in the Constitution. It is not practical to have free college education, but it is practical to keep it very low. And so we have that public pressure, especially here in North Carolina and other state institutions, that the taxpayers are saying that the parents who are parents of students in that state are saying we need to keep tuition low. And we do see that, obviously. In Ivy League schools, the pressure is competition. That is the broken remnant of the market working, right? Ivy League schools compete for students, and one of the tools they use to compete is loans. Obviously, now I'm going to tell you that's broken too, because there's a court case coming up about price fixing between Ivy League institutions. And so there are, as you mentioned, there are pressures, counter pressures against tuition rising. And as you mentioned, there's a demographic decline. But I'm afraid that the demographic decline will have an effect on, it won't necessarily have the effects that we want it to. Small universities focused on knowledge for knowledge's sake are frankly some of the most vulnerable. Universities that are easy diploma mills might be the least vulnerable because it's an easy ticket to that piece of paper that people want. And so I don't think we can rely on the forces that currently exist to fix the problem, although we can work with them. Way back in the back, yes.
I have a tendency towards cynicism about this whole college thing because from my understanding, I feel as though the elites in the country have kind of co-opted the system to train the mind in a certain way, which is where you have things like tenure and you have the cronyism between the government and universities. So the cynical side of me kind of thinks it's a really big uphill battle. However, the hopeful side of me wonders, maybe we're not woking up, but we're waking up, and we're seeing that the labor market, I mean, they're paying $17 an hour to go work at Sheetz. You know, you don't have to have a degree to work at Sheets. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that kind of coming into play now and us realizing that what makes the country turn is not degrees, it's actually like physical labor, which is actually kind of slightly Marxist in a way, but like the good parts of that. So what are your thoughts on that?
So there have been some good developments, and I think that tech has actually been a leader here. There have been a lot of tech industries that, because they can easily prove that the tests they are giving are job related, can test a student who has never been to college, figure out, hey, this person can code, and that's all I care about, and hire them on the spot. And so there have been a lot of tech companies, and I have a list floating around somewhere of companies that will hire without a degree because the skills that they're looking for is so easily definable. And so that's a really hopeful sign that tech has figured out that, you know, a 4-year degree in computer science, you may or may not be the right thing, and they've figured a way to get employees that they need in a faster way. So I think that's very hopeful. I also think that, you know, despite me sitting here saying everything is broken, everything is bad, like, there are a lot of people who come out of universities and had a good experience. There are a lot of people who have come out of universities, gotten the degree they wanted, gotten the jobs they wanted, and it worked for them. And so, as I say, there are things to preserve as we try to repair this broken market. We want to preserve the good things, and I think they are there. Yeah, Eric.
First of all, I just want to say, as a bureaucrat who works for both the College Board and the UNC system, I take no offense at your call that there should be fewer of us. I want to build a little bit on your observation about sort of tech credentials. Because one of the things we're looking at a lot at both the College Board and the UNC system is how do you create an effective market signal for non-university graduates to show this is a credential of value, and to employers that this is a credential of value. So I share your frustration that that field has not grown fast enough. There is a lot of development in sort of the non-degree credential badging boot camp space, and it's a wild west. Like, there's a lot of scamminess, there's a lot of like inefficiency in how students and parents are able to figure out like what's good and what's not. What are some of the effective ways that these new entrants into the education space can signal value to both parents and employers?
Well, I think that, you know, the employers have started figuring it out because they are administering tests to students, and it's especially easy, like I said, in something like coding, where like you either know it or you don't, and the employer can figure that out pretty quickly. And so I think that if there is a kind of, and I know nothing about tech skills at all, so, but if there is some kind of nationally recognized testing mechanism for technical skills, I think that would be really useful. And it would not have to be a government test. It could be a test developed by Google or Apple or some other company, or Microsoft. Is it Microsoft trying to do something like that? I don't know. But I think that really, if you have an opportunity to test for skills and say, hey, this guy's got it, or this person doesn't, I think that's the easiest way to, you just prove it. Yes?
Google already has that. You want to do project management, you go on Coursera, you sign up for Google, you do it, and then they will hire you. They need project managers. They do that with coding and stuff like that. So those things are already coming. All Google needs to do is say, we're buying UIT or whatever it is. They pretty much have changed the market. And you mentioned Purdue's chancellor, who's probably the most innovative chancellor out there. When he bought Keller, he took their online MBA program and made it available to the world for $26,000. And Illinois canceled their executive MBA program, moved it online. You can take it to Coursera for $23,000. And you compare that to University of Chicago, which is $160,000. You're already seeing market forces moving around. And the other thing I'm going to mention is we're seeing small private colleges not being able to survive. And so Midland University out in Nebraska merges with another one, and they create a bigger university. They may not survive this because they're being crowded out by, by all sorts of stuff.
Right. No, I mean, I think that, you know, to paraphrase Jurassic Park, the market finds a way. But it would be way easier for the market to do what it does best without all of the interventions we have. So we would see, Google could do more, or more companies could do what Google's doing in their own fields if we didn't have so many market interventions. So I'm all in favor of the things that we have seen, the innovations that we have seen, but I think that those are occurring despite a lot of market interventions instead of because of them. Yes, right here.
I guess I would just say, like, not as a question, more of as a statement in this moment, but I kind of see it as like a bigger intrinsic issue in how we're dealing with what we regard as economics, because in the end of the day, like, the pricing mechanism for what tuitions are charging is not controlled by free economics one bit. So, like, we ask, like, a lot of these problems seem from the surface, like we could solve it with, just putting money back here, but at the end of the day, it's a fundamental issue in my opinion, and I just feel like the pricing mechanism, that's one example. Like, how do you actually get a pricing mechanism? It's based off of demand and supply. How do you artificially inflate a pricing mechanism? You have something like what we're experiencing today telling us what the cost of something is. Someone said $160,000.
That's for University of Chicago.
For University of Chicago, but these third-party payers are stepping right in and they're just paying it. So that's not free market. Like, these third-party payers, the Stafford Loan partners, like, they're all under the Department of Education. Like, let's not kid ourselves that this is free economics.
No,
It's
and
my point,
I
guess.
don't. I think the whole purpose of my talk is to say this is not, we've got so many interventions in the market system that it's not a market system.
Yeah.
And I mean, it would be great if we could, roll back the clock to a time before student loans were the giant business that they are now, because they have wreaked havoc. But, and as much as I wish that could happen and we could start all over, I think we have to start from where we are.
Yeah.
And that's a harder thing to do.
It's not destroying solution.
Brad?
Jenna, okay, so you have a very good view of the landscape of the universities and what they're doing. How invested are universities with really good names like Duke or Harvard in maintaining this structure that we have now, right? I mean, how embarrassing is it for them when they put a kid through college for $160,000 or $200,000, and then some upstart school comes along, right? And the employer gives them the test, and those kids pass the test with flying colors, and the Harvards and the Dukes don't. So how invested are they in maintaining this current structure?
Well, I think the Harvards and the Dukes they're not competing in the same space as the kids going to code for Google. It's a different space.
But that's the issue. The schools are not agile enough to change to the technology.
Right, no, the schools are definitely not agile. They are.
So that's why
I hear often
that's
that-
why Google's just skipping that and
Yeah,
going
no, they are.
straight
They
to
are.
it.
Yeah, I hear often that universities are the most, they are simultaneously very conservative and very, very liberal at the same time. Because as institutions, like, they are slow to change, kind of stolid, stuck in an early 20th century model. Yeah. But I think that the sad reality is that Harvard is insulated from almost anything. Darryl.
I had a question, and this might be directed to Terry as well. Has anyone studied the relationship between the quality of public education and how much money is going into higher education to help remediate some of that learning loss or deficiencies?
As far as remediation rates, we used to have, I think, more reliable numbers. The community college used to remediate like a third of incoming students who graduated directly from high school and went to community college. And the remediation was in basic math, sort of pre-algebra, and reading and writing. And they changed the standards for qualifying for remedial classes using a multiple measures system, which reduced the number of students receiving remediation. But now that, I don't know, actually, I haven't looked recently about the UNC system, but I've heard that there were ways to have remedial classes that weren't necessarily called remedial classes, so you don't draw attention to remedial classes.
Right, they've redefined remedial classes and redefined the way they do remediation. So some students at our universities are in the same class that everybody else is in, they're getting remedial services. And so that's a lot harder to count. And so the data that we currently have on remediation is not where I would like it to be.
East Carolina's got a program specifically designed for kids with learning disabilities. They figure out what your learning disability is, and they will walk you through your 4-year degree. So, I mean, it's designed for any kid who's got a unique way of learning.
Yes.
So I have one related comment, and then I have a totally separate question. The master's degree programs have nothing to do with what anybody learns. One thing that I think is the white elephant is that you pay all that money for the relationships and the people you meet while you're there, and the alumni network. Anything else, my friend Steve here can crunch numbers on a multifamily property deal better than any analyst at any company ever. Did he go to Harvard? No. But he's been in the business and he knows it. Cold. But they'll pay for that extra. Oh, they went to Duke, they went to Harvard, you know, UPenn, that's the worst. Alumni scam.
I have to keep me accountable.
I wasn't going to, I was talking about the school, not the degree. Now, the actual question, where does trades and vocational and separating skills from knowledge, where does that tend to come in to alleviate some of this stuff? At the high school level, where, look, when I was growing up, I'm 52, you know, when you were in high school and you were a moron, they handed you a shovel when you walked out. Let me teach you. It was that simple. Or go, here's a hammer. Go learn to be a, they were